Hello, Mamta Mohandas and Prithviraj, and welcome to Film Companion South.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys here. And I think I'll begin with Mamta first because this is my first interview with you. And I'm just going to ask you this question. Of all the industries, do you think Malayalam cinema is the only one where you can actually say that for heroines, age is just a number? Because in the other southern industries, you find that, the minute everyone has their 5 or 6 years of like, heroindom, so to speak. And then they slowly slip into character roles and other kinds of things. Would you say Malayalam cinema is a bit different in this case?
After spending 15 years in this industry, I think I've had a little bit of, I've had a good taste of Malayalam and, of course, forayed into Tamil and Telugu films as well. I think it is easier for one to get typecasted in the other two industries faster than or earlier than in Malayalam. Even if you have made your choices well, I think it's it's highly possible that you can have a longer stint and still get substantial roles. Not that if you just play mother of a child in one of the films, the following film is also going to offer you the same in Malayalam. They still see you for the person that you are and also the talent that you have and what you have to offer to that character. I can only speak for myself, right? I can't speak for everyone. I also feel that I haven't really put myself out there when it comes to Tamil and Telugu films. In fact, I did my last Telugu film over a decade ago. So I don't know how much time has changed what films have to offer heroines who are very relevant in those industries at the moment. But I think Malayalam is definitely one of those industries where there's a lot of opportunities here for women when it comes to scripts being specifically written for very specific kinds of women types or personalities.
Right. That's exactly what Manju Warrior said as well. And let me tell you, the other two industries, as much as I love them and I, watch everything, I've seen actors who've played Kamal and Rajini's heroines later play their mothers. And I'm like, is no one really seeing this as, I'm not talking about it as an issue or anything like that, but it's just so funny because, that discrepancy happens. And, I just wanted to find out how it was over there. So with this Mamta and Prithviraj, is there a kind of pressure or some kind of challenge in doing a role that has been made famous by somebody else? Of course, we can talk specifically about Bhramam and the roles played by Ayushmann Khurrana and Tabu, or any other thing, any other remake. Or do you guys just approach it like it's just another movie and I'm just going to do it my way?
As much as one needs to be a little careful when they choose to be a part of a remake, and when it comes to Bhramam, I'll keep it specific to this movie. It is a successful film. It's a film that I truly, truly enjoyed. But that itself, and Tabu excelling in the role Simi, offered me an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to how can I play Simi differently, or how can I bring a little piece of me into that character? How have I perceived that character? And it was also important to understand how I do not want to play that character. Because I have a clear idea of what she has done for that role. And I wanted to, I just felt that I try to stay as authentic as I can to the way I have perceived that character.
When you say how I do not want to play that character, can you give just a small example of something that you saw there and you said, I'd probably do that a little differently?
I felt that there were lot of areas where I would have ended up mimicking her performance.
Okay.
And it happens when you have enjoyed her performance so very much. And the reason why you really enjoyed that movie is because of her very deviance-filled nature in that. Out of a sheer touch of like innocence as well, right? She's trying, everyone's in that position in the film because of their circumstances. So I wanted to try and play it as probably with a little more innocence, I would say, because I felt that when this character was brought to me, the first thing that I was thinking was, if the age bracket, like, am I a little too comparatively younger So am I playing, because I'm playing Shankar sir's wife in the in the movie. So I just needed to be a little more mindful of that. So there's like a significant age difference between these two characters. But how do I, trying to be cunningly cute
Oh,
in my role,
that's
right?
nice.
Because I think it also kind of answers your previous question, because we have 50-year-old actors playing, wanting anywhere between heroines who are aged between 18 and 25, depending on how big or small they look on screen.
Right.
So this is basically a small answer to that as well. So I had to just bring a little bit of that freshness, a
Yeah,
little bit
but
of bubbliness.
thank you for using that word cunningly cute, that phrase. It's really nice. So,
Yeah.
Prithviraj, tell me about you. What was it like that for you? How do you approach these things?
So I think the first thing that you need to acknowledge when you attempt to remake is the reason why you're remaking that film. It's because the original was a really good film, or else you wouldn't be bothering remaking it. The wrong way to approach a remake would be to see a film and then think, hang on, this is not the way to do it. I can do it better. Let me, that is a wrong way to go about remaking a film. Acknowledge the fact that there was a brilliant piece of cinema created. You got inspired as a team, as a filmmaker, as an actor, as a producer. You got inspired by the original piece of cinema, and you wanted to do your own version of it. Now, having said that, as an actor, I also think it is very important that there is already a set of actors who have done their own actors interpretations for the original. Now, don't base your performance on what you assume their interpretation was. When you watch a performance, you can only assume what their interpretation was.
Right.
What was their thought process? What were they thinking when they did each scene? You can only assume. I've not spoken to Aishman. I've not had a one-on-one with Aishman where he told me what he was thinking, what his thought process was, and I did not want to have that as well. So it is important that as much as you love and you are in awe of the original, that you don't base your performance on an assumption of what the original actor's interpretation was.
Yeah.
You need to do that exercise yourself. You need to read the adapted screenplay, and then you need to do your own interpretation of the text on paper. Not just Mamta. I thought every actor in this film consciously or subconsciously did that. It's a very well written screenplay for an adapted one. I really like what Sharath has done with the original and how he's placed it into the Malayalam milieu. And it is quite spectacularly shot. Obviously, it has to be because,
Obviously.
yeah, Ravi K. Chandran is shooting it. And I personally enjoyed the performances in the film as well. So for me, Ayushmann was, of course, brilliant in the film. I thought it was as fine an actor as he is. I still think it is one of his finest. But for me, it was very important that I base my performance on my understanding of the Malayalam text. And that's what I've done. I hope people think it is good and it is entertaining. But I do remember distinctly watching Andhadhun long back and thinking, man, I mean, this would work so well in Malayalam. It was more or less the core was pretty much a straight plant in the Malayali milieu. I was shooting for Lucifer when Andhadhun released, and it was Vivek Oberoi who first told me, man, you got to see this film that released. I just think it would make such a good Malayalam film, and I think you have to do it. And it was Vivek Oberoi who first told me that I should do Andhadhun. And incidentally, I don't know if I'm a huge Sriram Raghavan fan as well. I think he's a wonderful writer-director. I'm sure he does not remember this. This is not the first time I've gotten in touch with Sriram Raghavan to try and remake one of his films in Malayalam. I tried to get in touch with him to remake Johnny Gadar in Malayalam.
Oh, okay.
Long back. Yeah. So I just think Sriram should now just straight make Malayalam films.
Right. Or you should do
Yeah.
Badlapur because it's another excellent film.
I love it. I love it. I love
Yeah.
Badlapur also. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned again, an interesting phrase, Malayalam milieu. We just saw the trailer, and the way it's been cut seems to suggest a broader kind of film. When I say broader, I mean the flavor seems to be a little more, where I would say Sriram's was a little moodier, a little, closer to noir. Whereas this seems to be something like filled with a lot of comedy, or like little more romance or whatever. When you say the script is brilliant, what is the Malayalam milieu thing that has been brought to this?
The thing is, when I said that Andhadhun at its core just lends itself so fantastically well to the Malayalam milieu, what I meant was this whole characters and their worlds. A blind musician. You suddenly take a place like Fort Cochin. You imagine this guy to be uh, a piano player for a church choir, and he does side gigs of giving piano lessons to private clients. It all just sits so well, and it sits so beautifully because that part of Cochin is stunning. And you look at Shankar Sir's character, what he is playing in the film, the yesteryear superstar with his whole volume of nostalgic work, and everything about it sits so well in the world of Malayalam cinema. To me, also probably because I'm a Malayali and I sort of comprehend and understand the humor better in Malayalam. To me, the Malayalam version of the film is a lot funnier.
Okay.
Bhramam to me is a lot funnier than Andhadhun, and it is at times, I think, even a bit more wackier than Andhadhun. But you're right. I think Ravi K. Chandran is taking the film away from the Noir school of visual grammar, and this is more of a more pleasant-looking, beautifully shot film. But the undertone is still that crazy, wacky, a group of people who just need that small little push to go over the edge. So that remains. Sriram's original interpretation of these group of people remains, but it is Ravi K's and Sharat's own way of placing them in a world that they have created. And for what it may or may not be, I can assure you the world looks great. So
now, Mamta, you have a Tamil movie coming up with Vishal called Enemy. All the way back in 2006, you made your Tamil debut with this film called Sivapadikaram. Which is actually a little underrated, I feel. What has changed in the industry from then? Obviously, you've not been a regular, but in the little bit that you've seen, has there been any significant change in the way things are done or anything else?
Well, I guess as much as cinema has gotten, I started with films. But since you dated it back to 2006, I think my knowledge of cinema or filmmaking was very poor, or even when it comes to being a performer on screen. Because to begin with, I was never an aspiring actor. That is a very, very long time ago. And yes, I'm happy to say that I have seen or experienced cinema change. Going from film to digital was one of the biggest changes that I have experienced. And along with that came what was required for your character and the kind of freedom that women started getting when it came to scripts. So I can definitely say that I've had a much meatier presence in an Enemy. Even though I would say as a subject, Sivapadikaram might have been a more exciting one to discuss. I think this movie has a lot more to offer, even though my screen time is a little short. And I'm actually playing Arya's pair in it.
There are many directors in the world who shoot their own films. Did you find that these are complementary skills? It's not a question I know that I should put in front of you, but I'm just asking, did you find that, because it's Prithviraj, you've directed films, and again, Mamta, you've been in films for a long time. Do you find that, because, the standard visual, when I was growing up and watching films is like, whenever they wanted to show the director, they'd show a man going like, this is just like to see what the frame is. And do you think they're complementary skills, cinematography and direction?
Absolutely. I mean, there's one thing that I have always, after starting to understand cinema, and also because it took me a good 6 to 7 years to start paying attention to the direction part of filmmaking. Because first 4 to 5 years was spent in being nervous that I've been chosen to become an actor. What do I do with this? To extend to that, I think I only remained in cinema because my first cinema would have made me feel as though I'm not good enough. So that challenge is what has kept me do this longer. I've always told myself, I think a director might not be able to become a cinematographer, but a cinematographer, an excellent cinematographer, can definitely become a director. So I don't see why, it is not complementary to each other.
Yeah. And Prithviraj?
So, I mean, I slightly disagree with what Mamta said there, because I think, a director may be able to cinematograph. He can, pick up the theory of it and become a cinematographer. The same way the cinematographer may be able to direct a good film. He might be eventually be able to translate his skills into filmmaking. But I don't think that an excellent cinematographer can definitely become a director. I still think these are different skill sets. But I do think that they sort of, have to coexist, and you can't hope to be one with absolutely no knowledge of the other. to break it down into really simplistic, scenarios. As a director, I can't just tell my cinematographer to frame something against an open window and then tell him why are the actors dark? They're in silhouette. Obviously, if you shoot against an open window, and bright light behind the actors, they are going to be in silhouette. Then you can't go and tell your cinematographer, no, it can't be silhouette, and tell your cinematographer to light it up from behind the camera and make it all look very ugly. So as a director, you need to have that sense of lighting and that sense of framing before you communicate with the cinematographer. At the same time, even a cinematographer, suppose there is a crux moment in the film where you really want the actors to be up close to you. You want to see what's happening, in their face. As a cinematographer, you also need to have your knowledge and awareness about filmmaking from a director's point of view. Because suppose, you're in the crux moment of a film where, you want to be up close to an actor. You want to see what's happening on his or her face. You can't have your cinematographer say, hang on, I mean, the light is beautiful. Can I just, frame her or him right side of the frame with negative space on the left? We'll show the ocean and the flare and all that. No. I mean, as a cinematographer, you need to understand that at this point, it's not about how well lit the frame is or how nicely composed the frame is. At this point, somebody watching the film needs to be up close to the actor. So I just think these two streams need to coexist. You need to understand one another. But just because a cinematographer is excellent as a cinematographer need not necessarily mean that he can make a good director. At the same time, just because a director has great sense of framing and lighting need not necessarily mean that he or she will make a good cinematographer. As far as Ravi K. Chandran is concerned, I just think he always wanted to be a filmmaker first.
Right.
He just happened to be damn good at cinematography. When Bhramam was first planned, he was not shooting the film. I put my foot down and I said, you have to shoot this film. And I take personal credit for the fact that Bhramam today is cinematographed by Ravi K. Chandran, because the other cinematographer who was supposed to shoot the film even landed up in Cochin. And I spoke to both of them and I convinced the both of them as to why Ravi K. should shoot this film. One, I thought the film, deserved the Ravi K. panache. Not that the other cinematographer was bad. He was great as well. Also, I just think that Ravi K. Chandran as a filmmaker is way better seeing the actors perform through this. He catches the minutest details through the eyepiece, I've seen him for some shots. Getting the operating cameraman to do the camera. He'll be in the monitor. Take one would be that. Take two would be hey Mar. He'll go and he'll be behind the eyepiece. So I knew this would happen. I know him for a while. I knew this would happen, and he's at his best when he's behind the camera, when he's looking at the actors through the eyepiece. And so it also depends on which cinematographer you're talking about, which filmmaker you're talking about. I'm very particular about how my films should look and how the frames should be lit and all that. But there are other filmmakers who just don't want to think about that at all. All they want to think about is where and how the actors should behave and all that. To each his own. So it depends on
Yeah. So technically,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to add to what Prithvi said, because earlier what I intended to say is that we most often see cinematographers at some point in their career foraying into filmmaking, whereas we see very few occasions of film directors going into cinematography, because it does require that technical skill. Because today I can probably start writing and also maybe directing, but can I become a cinematographer? I know I cannot. I will have to take lessons for that.
I was actually just going to ask you that question. I was just going to ask you that question because I was going to ask, like, Prithviraj, given your vision, the fact that you made this film and like two films, and the fact that you know so much about how specific you want your frames to be, do you think you could kind of hack it as a cinematographer at least 50%? And I wanted to ask you, Mamta, if you could hack it as a as a director,
So I'll start. I know that I can handle a camera and I can expose footage and it'll be seen. Whether it'll be good looking footage, I don't know.
Right.
We do that with our phones these days.
Yeah, exactly. So,
right from shooting to cutting to editing, like everything, sound, we do it all.
No,
right?
I've seen stunning films made by 12-year-olds. I mean, seriously, good-looking stuff. It's shocking that they have that knowledge. It's such a...
See, it's just that from the time the light meter has disappeared on the sets, right? I think cinematography has become way more accessible. So it used to be that you needed to know what stock was mounted. Let's say you were on 250D Fuji. And then you had to go and measure your key light with a light meter, and then compensate for the filters that were put in. Then calculate, okay, for this much of key light, for this stock with these many filters, this is what I will cut. And then have to, and then hope it's all great. And then it turns out in the lab finally. By then it is too late for you to do anything about it anyway. Today, you have a trans video on the camera, you put your filters, you light up, and then you can adjust and look at the footage and, okay, a little bit more, little bit, cut the aperture a bit more. So it's become way more accessible. That is not to say it takes the charm away from talent. Great cinematographers still make things look great. You watch a Ravi K. Chandran piece of footage, you know this is special. So,
Yeah. So
I mean, after all, greatness has traveled a little bit, right?
Yeah.
No one becomes that up, overnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mamta, do you think theaters will come back in all their glory, the past glory?
Whoa, this is actually a really tough one, huh? Because I don't know if I should be saying this or I'll be held against it, because I have truly started enjoying watching movies in the comfort of my own home with my family. The one thing that I do not like about home experience is that I get interrupted several times by family, which does not happen in the theater, right? Again, as I always say, I speak for myself and I enjoy both experiences, but do I believe that theaters will still bring in the kind of crowds that we used to? Maybe not initially, but it could happen in the near future. And we do have people who love watching films only in cinema, mostly in cinema, I would say.
Yeah.
And movies are perceived as well as watched and enjoyed differently. Different movies are enjoyed differently in home as well as theaters, right? So they have their own audience.
Yeah.
There are some movies which have released on OTTs, which would not have become, such great hits or accepted if the same were released in cinema.
Right. I hear the director of Bro Daddy is hoping for that as well.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I think theaters will be back up and running in their previous glory, but what will need to change is the kind of cinema that's being made for theaters. Like we have discussed this before, I just think that cinema will now, undergo a bifurcation where, there'll be content made for streaming services, and then there'll be content made for the theaters. Basically, you're not making content per se for the platforms. You're making content for the viewing experience. I think certain kinds of cinema will render themselves better for community viewing, where you watch it with 500, 600 other people. Then there'll be certain kind of cinema which will render itself better for personal viewing, where it is just you and the screen. There is not a third element. So I also think filmmakers will now need to learn. You read a script, you read material, and you need to be able to take that call on, hang on, how is this going to be best made? How can I make this text into the best possible piece of cinema? Would it lend itself better to a very personal kind of film where I just want to speak to the viewer one-on-one? Or would it be better if I say this to a crowd? So it's going to be a very interesting future, not just for the streaming services / theaters scenario, but it's also going to be very interesting for filmmakers, for actors, for producers. So I don't think it's a be-all end-all of theaters. I just think it is a beginning of a new kind of coexistence, which is great. Yeah.
Right. Now, so tell me one thing about, let's say, the flavor of Bro Daddy that makes you think, wow, this is really meant for like a community viewing. Is it the fact that it's a light film? Is it the fact that it has big actors? What do you think is like the USP of it that's going to make people say, I'm going to go to the theaters and watch this film?
So I still don't know if Bro Daddy is releasing in theaters. At least as we stand today, there is absolutely no guarantee that I can say that by the time my film is ready, theaters are going to be back up and running 100%. I still don't know. But I can still tell you that Bro Daddy is ideally a theatrical release. I'll tell you why. Because you might think what works best in theaters are those goosebumps, those massy kind of films. But I just think that humor works best in theaters because when you sit alone and smile, the smile becomes a giggle when it's 10 people, and the giggle becomes a laugh when it's 100 people.
Yeah.
So you almost feed off each other. It's like suddenly everybody is laughing, so a moment sort of gets enhanced. So I think Bro Daddy is a fairly funny film. I hope the people think so too. So
okay. So thank you both, and all the best for Bhramam. So
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rangan.
Thank you very much.